Hello Sketchy friends. In today's video I want to share with you a tutorial that I actually filmed last year after visiting Stellnbosch here in South Africa, which is one of the oldest towns in South Africa, about an hour away from Cape Town. And I just really wanted to share this tutorial with you. It's something that I filmed for my Pretty Sketchy TV members, and I just think you're going to get lots of value from it. But also it is one of the many buildings that we will see on my Sketchy South Africa trip, which is happening from the 6th to the 13th of September 2025. We're going to start in the mother city in Cape Town, which has just been voted the best city of the world 2025 by Time Out magazine, may I mention. And then from there, we're going into the depths of the Cape Winelands, famous for its beautiful architecture, its wine, obviously, incredible food, incredible mountainscapes, and just an absolutely gorgeous area. So we're going to see so much more than the average person does who visits Cape Town. We're really going to get out there. We're even going to go as far as a place further down on the coast called Hermanus, which is famous for whale watching, although we will be out of whale watching season, unfortunately. Please do join me on this trip. It's going to be absolutely amazing. You get myself with art instruction every single day. I'll be teaching you how to capture the beautiful scenes we're seeing in your sketchbook with ink and watercolor. We've got Annie, who is one of the best tour guides around. She's been doing this for 3 decades. She is so much fun. And she's even a sketcher herself, which is absolutely amazing. We're going to have a driver, private transport, private hotel rooms, no sharing in this trip, unless you want to, of course. We can organize that. One fabulous meal a day, wine tasting. Guys, this trip has got everything. So let me just mention though that I am also leading trips to Portugal and Spain, so do check those out as well. I'll leave all the links in the description below. But I want to get into this tutorial. So you're going to see me speaking to you from the past, from a year ago at the beginning of this tutorial. Again, just because it's something that I filmed for my members last year, but I think it's a really cool tutorial. It's a little bit longer than my average video, but it really takes you step by step on how to learn how to not draw. Like, you don't have to draw everything. You don't have to draw the most obvious view. It just gives you a little bit extra. So I really hope you enjoy this one. Do check out my South Africa trip and my other trips in the description below. If you are not in travel mode this year, then you can come and learn ink and watercolor sketching with me online as well. sketchyouradventures.com. Okay, let's get into it. Hey Pretty Sketchy friends, so today I wanted to do a tutorial on this building here. You might have seen my YouTube video. I went to sketch in a town called Stellnbosch here in South Africa for a few days. On one of the days we had Urban Sketchers Cape Town come up and join Urban Sketchers Stellnbosch, which was really cool. So we started out in front of this building to do with Stellenbosch University. It's the law building. I did a quick demo just in regards to how I might think about looking at this building. It's pretty symmetrical, and you can break it down into 2 even rectangles with a shallow triangle on top. I explained because it's symmetrical, I like to at least have a center line maybe in pencil. I could also see that basically there was 5 equal vertical divisions as well. So I'm always looking at these kinds of things when I'm drawing a building, especially front on. I actually really enjoy drawing buildings front on and just slapping them right in the middle of the page like this. I think it's really fun and graphic. It's all about the building, and especially with travel sketching, it's just a really fun way to capture a beautiful building that you see on your travels. If I do draw inside a frame, I do like to break out of the frame a little bit in areas. I think that's a really fun, quirky little thing to do. So yeah, that's sort of what I was explaining. But because I'd drawn this building already front on, I really wanted to do something different. So whilst everyone was pretty much sat in front of the building, I thought, let me go and sit in a different place and just sort of see what comes out. So this wasn't really too planned, but it's just kind of what came out. And I really was attracted to the tree in the foreground. It was very gnarly and like kind of crazy looking. I just really liked it. And I thought, well, what if I just draw this tree and then just organically just draw what's behind it and just see where I end up, you know? So I haven't drawn the whole building at all, but I've ended up with this kind of front facade here. And it just gave me the opportunity to really try and concentrate on some of the interesting shadows that it was casting. People seem to really, really enjoy this sketch on Instagram and other people that have seen it. So I thought, how about, why don't I share with you guys how I would go about doing something like this step by step, or show you how I created this sketch. It might be really, really interesting for you, my very special Pretty Sketchy friends. Okay, so this is a bit of a longer video, but there's some things I just wanted to keep in real time, and there's other bits that I've sped up just so you don't have to sit through and watch everything. But what I'm going to start doing, and what I encourage you to do, is just think about, just very quickly, and it just needs to be like this, just very small and simple. Just think about your thumbnail, or make a little thumbnail, think about your composition. So the main thing I'm looking at here is the rule of thirds, where we've got the vertical and horizontal spaces of the page divided up into thirds. I'm pretty sure most of you know about that. If you don't, a quick Google search or YouTube search will help. And I just want to place that tree basically on the vertical line that's on the right side. So this line that I'm drawing now, I'm doing this very faintly. I wouldn't necessarily do this on my page. I didn't when I sketched it before. You'll find over time you can just visualize it, but even though you can't see it quite so well here, at least, you know, you can kind of see where I'm going with this. So that tree, I want that to be on that vertical line on the right-hand side of my page, and that will make a nice strong composition. And I'm looking at the tree, and I'm trying my best not to lift my pencil off the page, and I'm just trying to keep it loose because it is like a super interesting organic shape. So, you know, I'm not pressing too hard with this. Basically, I'm just trying to put the rough shape of the tree in. I am going to go over with ink, but I think it's just quite fun to get the idea of the tree with pencil first. And yeah, the looser and more free you can be with this, I think the better the outcome. And you don't have to draw the tree exactly, but just try and get some of the key features. Now, on this top horizontal line, I feel like that's naturally where one of the strong horizontal lines of the building is going to fall. So whilst you don't have to put things on every line of your rule of thirds grid, it is quite nice when something else just naturally falls on a third line as well. So that's just something that I'm pointing out. Now I have the tree on the page, I'm using it as a visual landmark to help me continue drawing the rest of the scene. So I'm using the tree as a guideline for where the next window should be, that's kind of to the left of it, also right behind it, and so on and so forth. Then I can build outwards from there. Then once I've got those windows in, then I can draw the balcony area. Then once I've got the balcony area in, I can draw these columns in. So it's almost like you're constructing a puzzle, really. And you can see I'm not drawing everything. I'm just putting basic shapes in for the windows and those columns. I'm just putting very loose vertical lines in, just so I know where they're supposed to be. All the detail is going to come later when I pick up my pen. This is just placeholders at the moment. I do apologise if you can hear my cat sneezing in the background. She is sneezing incessantly at the moment. I'm sorry about that. So, and then I'm putting in this kind of gate post thing, which is, you know, very much in the foreground, and it's quite big in relation to the rest of the building because it is much further forward. Again, you can use your visual landmarks. Where does the ball of that post come in regards to the windows and doors sitting behind it? Where does it end in relation to the bottom of the tree? That kind of thing. So because it's so much further forward, it is a lot larger on the page than the building, which we know logically is taller and bigger than the post. But, you know, this is how we infer perspective on the page, especially when we don't have any parallel lines to do that. So it's what we call 0 point perspective when we draw things bigger and lower on the page and with thicker lines and that kind of thing, because we're trying to force the perspective so the viewer knows what's going on. So that is as much as I'm going to do with a pencil. I really do like getting my basic shapes down with a pencil. It's just really something I like to do. It's kind of my planning stage of my sketch. It doesn't take too long, to be honest with you. So, and in that way I can just make sure everything's going to fit, everything's where I want it to be. And then I can just be so much more confident and loose with my pen because I've got my map down on the page. Not every sketcher likes to do that. Some people just go straight in with pen. That is fine. But I do encourage you, especially if you are a beginner, to definitely use the pencil. And even if you're not a beginner, there's absolutely no shame in using a pencil first. I just like to know that my sketch is basically going to work out how I roughly want it to. So I don't want to make any mistakes like falling off the page or drawing things too big and spending an hour on a sketch when I could have avoided that just by using a pencil very, very quickly. That's just my personal preference. This is a Fude nib fountain pen, by the way, guys. You do not need this pen. I'm just really enjoying drawing with it at the moment. I do feel like I can be quite nice and loose with it. It does have the added advantage that you can do some thick lines and thin lines at the same time just by turning the angle of the pen, or just by changing the angle that you're drawing with. But please, by no means do you need any pen like this. Just a normal waterproof pen will do the job, and then you can go back and thicken up lines later on anyway. I tend to do that right at the very end, even after the watercolor stage. I just like to go back and emphasize some certain lines. So I have sped this bit up just a little bit by 2, just so it just goes a little bit quicker. But basically all I'm doing is just going around and adding and drawing in all the details. Like my caption said there, it is best to try and draw the things that are in the foreground first, and then draw the things behind those things. Sounds fairly straightforward, fairly simple, but it's easy to forget or not do that, as I was doing just there. So I drew the tree first, and then I was drawing behind it. And then I got to a stage where I wanted to draw that column over on the left, and then realized actually I need to draw this fence post or this gate post in first, and then I can continue drawing the columns in the background. So just, you can keep your eye on that. And I just want to point out how much I am scribbling in some of these details. I will give you a close-up in a minute once I finish the ink drawing of quite how loose and scribbly and sketchy this drawing is. When I first started, took so long because I was really desperately trying to be so precise. And actually that's the very thing that can kind of kill your drawings, because they just end up so stiff and static. Whereas if you're, pretty loose and scribbly like this, it just gives it a lot more energy. But it is something that comes with time and comes with confidence. And, you'll just have that aha moment at some stage where you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I get it. And that's even if you want to draw like this. Some people do just like being more precise and clean with their sketching, and that's absolutely fine too. It is just a stylistic decision. So do whatever you feel is more appealing to you. So I've put a thicker line in there because I can tilt my pen and do that, and then just put that kind of ledge in above those windows. At the bottom here, you can see I'm just letting these lines trail off into sort of nothingness. That was what I did in the original sketch, and I just think I actually did it a lot whilst I was in Stellnbosch, and I really enjoyed it. It just reminded me that you don't have to draw every last detail, finish off buildings, draw the ground, draw everything. You can just draw the bits that you're interested in, and it can still make a really, really cool sketch. So yeah, just something, again, it might sound fairly straightforward or obvious, but it's easy to get carried away with a sketch. And actually sometimes the things you leave out can speak more volume than the things that you include, and it can definitely amplify a sketch for sure. So I am putting a bit of the roof in on this sketch just because I've got the space. So that's something that's a bit different from the original, but I quite like it. I think it works nicely. And then just scribbling in some foliage at the bottom here as well. And now I'm just adding in very loosely some of the information inside the windows. I'm not doing this precisely at all. But again, I just don't think it matters too much. I think it just adds to the liveliness of the overall sketch. And you can notice I'm holding my pen about halfway back. I'm really trying to keep fairly loose. And I feel like the further you hold your pen back, the more you can kind of be a bit more expressive with your marks. And don't get me wrong, I could have, I know I've sped this video up, but I could have slowed down and done this way more precisely, but it's just kind of not the nature of the sketch. And I was trying to think of what I was doing when I was on location. I might have been a tad more careful or slower, but yeah, I think sometimes the quicker and looser you draw things in, the more sketchy the sketch looks. And then like that's kind of what I'm going for sure. I just really like that look. So that is the ink stage done. And I just wanted to zoom in with my phone here and just show you how really close up, quite how messy and scribbly and loose this is. But at the end of the sketch, you won't even notice that. And if anything, as I said, it just adds to the overall feel of the sketch. And if you look at a lot of sketches, Jim Richards springs to mind instantly, but look at how scribbly and non-precise his drawing is. Yet once he's finished his sketch, you do not even see it. You just look at like, bam, like how he's painted in the light and the colors and the contrast. He's a big fan of using black brush pen as well. And he's just a master of capturing light, I think. If you don't know Jim Richards, do go and check out his work. But my point is that you don't need to be drawing things perfectly. Actually, I think the quicker and looser you sketch, you might be happier with those results. So give it a go. So we're moving on to the watercolor stage now. This is a large brush, number 10. It's an Escoda Reserva. It's an expensive brush. You do not need this brush by any stretch of the imagination. And in fact, I do switch to a significantly cheaper brush in a minute. I switch to an Etcher brush, which is a synthetic one. This is a natural hair one. Yeah, mainly I like doing this kind of watercolor painting with a big brush when I'm just sort of dabbing in paint and trying to be loose. And also with this Moonglow color, which I used extensively when I was in Stellnbosch last week, it just lends itself really nicely to having lots of water and being applied generously and that kind of thing. So this color is really nice because once it dries, you can see the pigment separation, and it also granulates really nicely as well. So it's perfect for using on trees, I think. Also, I used it a lot on the roofs of buildings, as well as the ground. I'm a big fan of using something like this for the ground. And I did have a bit of quinacridone rose on the top of my palette there, which I also dabbed in. So, but by no means, again, you need this color either. If I didn't have Moonglow, if I wasn't using Moonglow right now, I'd probably be using like Payne's Grey and then just touching in a little bit of quinacridone rose here and there. And the thing with that technique is just touching in the color just so that they blend together nicely, but not mixing them on the page, just letting them interact with them, with each other by themselves. And I'll show you again in the foliage in a little bit. And I'm just sort of applying a bit of clean water here just to soften off some of the harsh edges that I've got. My paint is still a bit wet, so it's still maneuverable on the page. So I'm just trying to soften that off a bit. But yeah, this is me just messing around really. You don't need to worry too much about this. I'm usually kind of just a slap the paint on the page kind of gal. So I don't sort of mess around too much. But yeah, I was just playing here really just to see if I could soften that effect a bit. And notice how I've applied the paint quite dark and on the left, and then on the right of the tree, I've kind of left it either the white of the page or just really softened off the paint over and to the right, just looking at the picture really and seeing where those shadows are. If you can do that, then you're going to have a nice sketch. If you just concentrate on where the light and the shadows are and exaggerate the two, so where the light is hitting, leave the white of the page, where the shadows are, make it really, really dark, then it's going to make for a super vibrant sketch. So I have switched brush here. As I mentioned, I'm now using just a synthetic etcher brush. I think it's a number 12, just because it doesn't hold quite so much water. And I wanted to be a little bit more precise with my painting here, just to try and indicate some of those shadow shapes. So that's why I changed brush to the synthetic one. And I'm just using indigo here. It's irrelevant what brand it is, but I'm just giving you that information just in case you're curious. My watercolor tin is just a hodgepodge of all kinds of random stuff that I've either been given or that I'm trying out, or that's left over from, a previous tin. So yeah. So I was starting with the shadows there on that gatepost, and then I went to put more shadows on the building, and I was like, oh, hang on a minute, I haven't even painted in the windows. So it's like, let's step back and let's do that first. It's amazing how you can kind of just not do things in what in my mind is the correct order, but I just get carried away with wanting to paint in those shadow shapes because they're so nice. So here I'm using an unusual color. I think this is called Mummy Bauxite, which is a Daniel Smith color, but any kind of reddish brown color that you either have or mix up is absolutely fine. And notice that I'm painting in the whole of the window and the whole of the doors, and that's because I'll come back on top of those later with a darker color. So I don't need to worry about painting around things too much. Just get the paint down all over the window and the door, and that's fine. And again, it might not necessarily be exactly what I'm seeing or exactly what's in the photograph, but it's my stylistic take on how I want to portray this scene. So now I'm doing the foliage, just the grass and stuff at the bottom of the scene, which I've probably overemphasized just because I really like putting in foliage, like nice bright colors. I think it plays nicely with the other duller colors in the scene. So I dabbed in some Indian yellow towards the top of the shrubs or the bushes or foliage, whatever you want to call it. So Indian yellow, and then I'm using a Daniel Smith green gold as the mid green, which I've dabbed in, and then I'm using a color by Rosa, which is just called green, to put in the dark green at the bottom. Now, you don't need 3 separate colors to do this. It's just what I happen to have in my tin, and they're my convenience colors because I'm lazy, so I don't have to mix things all the time. They just seem to be what I happen to have right now. Sometimes I have sap green in my set, sometimes I have something else. But the point is putting a nice yellowy green or cold yellow at the top of the plants, getting a mid-colored green in the middle, and then a really dark, juicy green at the bottom. However you get there, whether you've got greens in your set or whether you mix them, doesn't matter, whatever. But that's a really nice quick way of capturing foliage so that you can really show the sunlight is hitting the top of those bushes there. And now I can get back to adding my indigo, my shadow shapes, which I'm so desperate to do. So I've started at the top there. This is quite a watery version of indigo. I don't want it to be too strong because it's just supposed to be shadows. Really nice color to use for shadows. You could also use something like the moon glow for shadows, but it might be a bit overpowering just because it's quite a nice color. So it might kind of take away from your drawing a little bit. I do like the moon glow for the tree because the tree is quite a focal point of the drawing, so that's fine. I'm just sort of putting some on the ground there, and it's kind of interacting with the green, but quite nicely. I quite like it. So even though it's not exactly what's really there, I'm quite enjoying that effect. And now I'm really just squinting at the photograph, looking for those shadow shapes. Don't be afraid to paint over what you've drawn and painted. That's what shadows do. I really wanted to make sure that the brown areas were dry before doing this. And also capturing where the light shines through the shadows. So you can see I've just put a few stripes there where the shadow's casting the from the balustrade, I think it's called, on that balcony. And that's just brings the whole thing to life if you can just capture something very simple like that. And yeah, it just brings the whole thing to life. It's like my favourite part of this sketch, apart from the tree, is that shadow shape that's cast over on the left with the gaps where the light's coming through. I think it's really, really pretty. And then just a couple of darker areas with indigo if you want to just darken a few bits up. Like if some shadows just aren't strong enough for your liking, you can just, yeah, add another little layer of indigo. And now I'm using my black brush pen and I'm going to go around and add in black in the top of these frames and then just some shadow shapes beneath. So I have sped this bit up just so you don't have to watch it in real time. Because it's solid black, it's really making the whole thing pop because the body of the building or the walls of the building are white. I've left them very deliberately white as well. I haven't sort of tinted them in any way. And adding this black really plays against that. So you get like nice contrast because basically you can't get any more contrasty than white and black. Yeah, that's what makes it really pop quite nicely. And then, as discussed, just adding a few thicker lines. So even though I was using that few day pen to start with, it doesn't mean to say that I don't then add in a few thicker lines where I may have missed some, or just, you know, when you step back from the sketch, I just really want to put a thicker line there. So I'm putting a thicker line around some of this post because it is in the foreground. So I just do want it to stand forward and make it very obvious that it's quite a lot further forward in the scene than the building. And also just with the tree a little bit, especially on that shadow edge, just adding a thicker line just to make it stand forward a bit more too. And then just adding some more pigment, less water, more pigment, just to make it really dark on that left edge, just to really emphasize those shadows even more. I just really like a lot of contrast and a lot of colour in my sketches, in case you hadn't noticed. So yeah, I just really like to amp that up sometimes. And there we go, that's pretty much the sketch. I'm really, really happy with it. It's got the essence of the original. It's a really nice, simple, quick sketch to do, really, in the grand scheme of things. I did notice I'd missed something though. I realised I missed this fence in the sketch. I think I missed it off in the original one as well, but I do think it adds a really nice layer to the sketch just to add that in. So I did that as well. And yeah, here's just a close-up. You can see that it's really nice and loose, really graphic, lots of white space, just a few choice colours in there, and an emphasis on the tree and the shadow shapes, and it just makes for a really interesting sketch to look at. So I'm really happy with this one. I hope this demonstration has taught you a lot, and you've picked up a lot of tips and tricks in this one. And any questions or anything you need, as I said at the beginning, please do let me know. Taria@urbansketchingworld.com.